My name is Sarah, and I am 28 years old. I am a nurse. I work 12-hour shifts in a hospital where I hold people's hands when they are scared and stay calm when everything around me is falling apart. I am good at staying calm. I learnt early. 2 years ago, my mother-in-law looked me in the eyes at my own dinner table and said 6 words that made everything suddenly, terribly clear. You were never good enough for him. Not behind my back, not in a whispered conversation I was not supposed to hear. Directly, to my face. At the table I had set and the dinner I had cooked in the house, James and I had built together. I want to tell you how I got to that table, and what happened after I left it. I met James at the hospital where I work. He was not a patient, he was visiting his father, who had been admitted for something routine, something that resolved itself within a week. James sat in the hallway outside his father's room, with a coffee he kept forgetting to drink, and a book he kept forgetting to read, and I passed him 4 times on my shift before he looked up and said, "Do you ever stop moving?" "Not usually," I said. He smiled, slow and warm. "I'm James," he said. "I know," I said. "Your dad talks about you constantly." His father was discharged 5 days later. James asked for my number the morning of the discharge, standing at the nurse's station with his father's paperwork in his hands, slightly nervous in a way I found completely charming. I gave it to him. We dated for 2 years. He was kind and steady, and he made me feel, for the first time in a long time, like someone worth choosing. He brought me coffee on my overnight shifts. He learned which patients I worried about and asked after them by name. He showed up, consistently, reliably, without drama. I loved him. I married him at 26, in a small ceremony, with good flowers and better food, and the specific happiness of someone who believes they have found their person. I had not yet spent significant time with his mother. Carol is 58 years old. She is small and precise, and she smiles constantly, the kind of smile that functions as a weapon, that makes everything she says sound pleasant, even when it isn't. She has been the center of James's family since before I arrived, and she intended to remain the center after. I was a problem for that intention. Not because I tried to displace her, not because I was difficult or demanding or anything other than a woman who loved her son and wanted to build a life with him, but because James, when he was with me, looked at me the way he had previously looked, only at his mother, and Carol noticed. The first time I met her, she held my hand in both of hers and said, "We are so happy to have you," with her constant smile, and I felt, underneath the warmth, something that was not warm at all. I told myself I was imagining it. I was not imagining it. The tools she used were quiet ones. There was the comparison, always gentle, always smiling. James's ex-girlfriend used to make this dish from scratch. Said while eating the dinner I had cooked. Not cruelly, just laid there, like something I was supposed to pick up and understand. I understood. There was the exclusion, family conversations that turned away from me at a certain point, family decisions that were made without consulting me, family photographs where I was somehow always at the edge of the frame. There was the undermining, small and consistent. Sarah must be exhausted from her shifts. Nursing is such hard work, bless her heart. Said with the smile. Said in a way that made my career sound like something to be pitied rather than respected. And there was James. James, who loved his mother and loved me and could not understand why those two things kept colliding. James, who said she means well and you're being too sensitive, and can we please just get through one dinner without this? Not because he was cruel, because he was caught between 2 people he loved and had chosen, without realizing he was choosing to ask me to be smaller rather than ask her to be kinder. I kept being smaller. For 2 years, I kept being smaller. Until the dinner. The dinner was a Sunday in October. I had cooked everything from scratch: roast chicken, proper roast vegetables, a salad with the dressing James liked. I had set the table carefully. I had been, as I always was when Carol was coming, trying harder than I needed to. Carol arrived with James's sister and a bottle of wine she handed to James rather than to me, which was not the first time, but which landed differently that night, like something I had been absorbing for 2 years, finally finding the limit of what I could absorb. Dinner was the usual arrangement, the conversation moving toward Carol, toward James's sister, toward everyone except me. I ate and smiled and passed things when asked and said the right things at the right moments. And then Carol said it. I don't remember what led to it exactly, some small moment, some tiny thing that opened the door. But I remember her voice, still pleasant, still smiling, saying, "You were never good enough for him." The table went quiet. James said, "Mom." Carol said, "I'm just being honest. She knows it. We all know it." I put down my fork. I looked at Carol across the table I had set and the dinner I had cooked, and I felt, very clearly and very calmly, the nurse's calm, the staying calm when everything is falling apart calm, that something had ended. Not dramatically, not with raised voices, just ended. "I think you should leave," I said. Carol's smile didn't waver. "I'm just saying what everyone—" "I think you should leave," I said again. Same tone, same calm. She left. James's sister left with her. James sat at the table and looked at me with an expression I had never seen on his face before. Something caught, something that knew it had been here, at this exact moment, before, in 100 smaller versions, and had always looked away. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know," I said. "She shouldn't have." "No," I said, "she shouldn't have, and you shouldn't have let it get here." He was quiet. "I need you to choose," I said. Not an ultimatum in anger, a statement of fact, delivered in the calm of someone who has finally understood what has been true for a long time. Not between me and her, between the marriage we said we were building and the one we've actually been living. He looked at his hands. I went to bed. He sat at the table for a long time. The next 3 months were the hardest of our marriage. James went to therapy, individual therapy first, then couples therapy with me, sitting across from a woman named Dr. Park, who asked questions with the precision of someone who had seen this exact dynamic many times and knew exactly where to press. He pressed back against his mother for the first time in his life. It was not easy. Carol did not respond well to being pressed back against. There were phone calls and tears and accusations and the specific drama of a woman who has held the center of a family suddenly finding the center shifting. James held the line anyway, imperfectly, sometimes reverting to old patterns and then catching himself. But holding. I watched him try. And I held the question that Dr. Park had asked me in our 3rd session when James had stepped out for a moment. "Do you still want this marriage?" I had not answered immediately. I had thought about the man in the hospital hallway with his forgotten coffee. The name learning, the shift coffee, the consistent showing up. The person James was when he was not caught between 2 people he loved. "Yes," I had said finally. "I want the marriage we said we were building." Then, Dr. Park had said, "You'll need to build it." Dorothy found me crying in the hospital break room on a Tuesday in November. She was 62, a senior nurse who had been at the hospital for 30 years and had seen most things and was not easily alarmed. She came in for coffee, saw me, and sat down across from me with the directness of someone who had no patience for pretending things weren't happening. "What's going on?" she said. I told her. More than I intended to. The dinner, Carol, James, the 3 months of hard work, the question I kept asking myself about whether it was enough. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "My husband's mother hated me for the first 5 years of our marriage," she said. "Thought I wasn't good enough. Told him so regularly." I looked at her. "What happened?" I said. "He chose me," she said simply. Clearly and without ambiguity. And she had to decide what to do about that. A pause. She came around eventually. Not fully, but enough. "How did you survive the not fully?" I said. She smiled, warm and real, nothing like Carol's smile. "I built something that didn't need her approval to stand," she said. "That's the only way." Dorothy and her husband Henry became, over the following year, something I had not expected to find in my 30s. Family. Not dramatically, in the way of good things, gradually, and then all at once. Sunday dinners that started as occasional and became regular. Henry asking about my patients the way my own father asked about my work. Dorothy texting me on hard shifts just to check in, not with advice, just with presence. People who showed up. James showed up too, differently, more clearly, more deliberately than before. He had conversations with his mother that I was not part of, but that I knew about, that changed something in the architecture of their relationship, in ways that slowly, imperfectly, changed something in ours. Carol did not come around fully. I want to be honest about that. She came around enough to sit at a table without saying things that ended dinners, enough to be in the same room without the constant low-grade hostility that had defined our early years. Not warm, not what I would have chosen, but enough. I stopped needing more than enough from her. That was the shift. Not her changing, me releasing the need for her to be something she was not capable of being. Building something solid enough that her approval was no longer the foundation of anything. I am 28 years old. I am a nurse. I work 12-hour shifts, and I hold people's hands when they are scared. I am good at staying calm. I have a husband who chose me, clearly, deliberately, at some cost to himself, and who keeps choosing me in the small, daily ways that matter more than grand gestures. I have Dorothy and Henry, who saved me a seat at their table before they knew me well enough to know how much I needed one. I have the life I said I was building, actually built. It is not the life I imagined at 26 in a small ceremony with good flowers. It is harder than that life, and more honest, and more mine. The dinner happened. Carol said what she said, and I picked up my fork, and I put it down. And I said, "I think you should leave," in my nurse's calm voice, and something that needed to end, ended. What came after was the real story. What came after was everything. If you are watching this and someone has told you, directly or in 1,000 quiet ways, that you are not good enough, I want you to know something. They are wrong. You do not need their approval to build something real. You need people who show up, who sit down across from you in break rooms and tell you true things, who save you a seat before they know you well enough to know how much you needed one. Find those people. Build something that doesn't need the wrong people's approval to stand. If this story reached you, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Tell me where you are watching from. I read every comment. You are enough. You always were.